Simona, and I am back with another video. Today I'm doing a review on Real Housewives of Atlanta, season 13, episode 2. If you're wondering why I didn't have the first episode up, I didn't have the time to get to it, so we're just gonna start from 2 and then go on forward. So the first scene we get is basically at Kenya's house. Cynthia's coming over, they're about to like hang out, chill out, whatever. This is the scene where we get introduced to the first new girl, who is Latoya. Kenya starts telling Cynthia how she's been getting cool with her, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop, whatever. They show some like flashback scenes where she had like previously shown up on the show before. And Cynthia's just being playfully jealous. She's like, oh, like you're gonna go downstairs and get her? You didn't go downstairs for me, blah, blah, blah. And then Cynthia starts saying how like, you know, like with this new girl, like it's kind of fast y'all getting to be, you know, good friends because Kenya's a lot. And then they do a flashback to Kenya and her just being the evil witch that she is throughout the seasons. So Latoya comes up, and personally me, I like her. Like her personality is very like outgoing, kind of on like the outspoken, you know, just out there. I personally do like her, but I can already sense that she's gonna annoy me with Kenya, which we'll find out later in the episode, because we already know Kenya's gonna have her be on some mean girl shit, and obviously this new girl wants to be with somebody who is established on the show, so she's probably gonna just be under her wing or like. But anyways, Latoya basically starts talking about Trinidadian men and mentions Kenya's husband, which I did not know he was from Trinidad, so that's like a fun fact we found out. And she just starts talking about how their Trinidadian men are like horners, and basically horners is a definition for ain't shit, and it's talking about how they're cheaters, liars, just all this stuff or whatever. She starts talking about a little bit about her separation. She's currently separated from her husband right now, and then that leads into them talking about Kenya and her situation with Mark. She's basically, obviously Cynthia already knows this stuff, but telling Latoya how like he doesn't live out in Atlanta, how he lives in New York, and how their situation is rocky. And Kenya's basically talking about how like it's hard, you know, going through all this with someone who doesn't just want to listen and wants to argue. So obviously we know Mark is like an asshole. Like it's very clear that he does not like Kenya at all, and honestly, don't blame him. And then Cynthia's talking about Lake Bailey, and Latoya's like, oh, like I thought it was a river. And then they just start laughing about that, clowning her, and then Kenya throws some shade like, oh, she would get along very well with Portia, basically making it seem like Latoya is like an airhead or whatever. So now we have the next scene, and it's Portia's mother and her sister and little baby PJ. They are over watching her while Portia is, I don't remember what state she was at, but wherever she got arrested at, she's about to get on the plane to come back home. They FaceTime her and they're talking to her about like her protesting and being like an activist. And basically Portia was just saying how like she's doing this for the people who can't be with us here no longer, like Breonna Taylor, obviously like doing it for her, and how getting out of jail and seeing her mother and hugging her and realizing, okay, like this is what I'm doing it for, like she's gonna have momentum to keep going. And I think it's really good that Portia is like on this wave. Like honestly, she has grown like a lot out of like the Housewives. Like she has really grown. Like she started off being a little airhead, a little ditzy, and now like even you can just tell like the tone of her voice, everything. Like she really like, she on her shit, and I give her props. So then the next scene we have Cynthia and the other new girl, Drew Sidora. If y'all don't know who Drew Sidora is, she's a singer, actress. She's known for being in The Game and Rooney, Melly, and Derwin. I used to love The Game, and yes, like if it wasn't for her, who knows? But basically they're out doing like outdoor dining, and Cynthia and her are talking, and basically this is the section where we just get to know Drew a little bit. She talks about her career. She's only been out here in Atlanta for like a year. She's trying to make more of a name of herself out here. She talks about how she wants to get like more like lead roles and stuff like that. Cynthia brings up Kenya and was like, oh, you know, Kenya did a little bit of acting, like maybe you may know her. And she's like, oh, like we're not in the same age bracket. Like it was low-key shade, but I got what she was saying, because it's like, you know, like she's not gonna be playing the same roles as her. It was kind of like, ooh, but like I get it. So the next scene we have Drew Sidora and It is her mom and her husband Ralph. It is their anniversary or their anniversary week or whatever. And her mom and her husband come up in the room and surprise her with flowers and all that. So then we get the little insight about their family. So her mom is staying with them now currently because of COVID. Obviously her mom is an older person, but that's causing some disruption in the house. She brings up, they actually have a flashback of like the mom and Ralph arguing and like getting into it with each other. And basically Drew is saying like, yeah, she'd be inserting herself in and she's just always like up in the tea. Personally, I feel like when it comes to like relationships, like you should have a good relationship with like your significant other's parents, but it shouldn't, if y'all got problems like that, go to a therapist. Like you don't need to like have them directly, your parents directly in the middle. All that is just messy and it never works out, honestly. I don't say never works out, but it just makes it more difficult. But yeah, so she's talking about how she be all up in the business, they be like fucking or whatever, and she'll walk in and look up and down. Between me and you, I think the mom got a little thing for Ralph. I don't know. She's a little too comfortable around him if you ask me. Drew talks about how they met, like they were only dating for I believe like 6 months and they got married, blah blah blah. They have 2 kids together. She has 1 kid on her own, and she just talks about their relationship. The mom asked them if they want to go to praise and worship on their anniversary, and they're like, I'll think about it. In my head, I'm like, for me, I'd be like, no. And then once the mom is about to leave, Ralph is like, oh, I'm surprised you didn't kiss me on the mouth. And I was just kind of like, kiss on the mouth? Now I know people in other like cultures or like they do kiss on the mouth, and I wouldn't mind that necessarily for my own family, but like I don't want to kiss my father-in-law in the mouth. Like that would just be weird. And she really did it too. I was just like, all right, I guess that's just how they move. So next up we have Candy with Riley's graduation. Obviously we are in a pandemic, so for her graduation they could only have 2 people, Candy and Mama Joyce. They come to her graduation, and basically on the car ride there with Candy and Mama Joyce, she's just talking about like how her experience for graduating high school is different. Obviously she was an escape, and the day of her graduation apparently she had a show, and I guess the rest of the members in there were mad that she even went to her graduation. We're basically like, get your ass back here, like we got real shit to do. And then Mama Joyce was talking about how she was like upset with them and how they didn't come. So basically they show their graduation. Side note, I would have talked about this if I would have recorded the first episode, but yes, Riley does have a nose job. It is very apparent. I'm not gonna say necessarily it looks bad because it does take a while for like any surgery you get to heal and like set in, but she does look completely different. Like when I watched the first episode, I literally like had to pause, rewind back, pause, because I was like, who? Like, she just doesn't look the same like at all. Like she looks rough. So the next scene we get Portia with little baby PJ and her mom, and they're basically once again revisiting, talking about the protesting and all that. And basically Portia is talking about how she needs to get her priorities straight with, you know, everything. Like yes, she's doing the protesting, but you know, make sure she gives her time to her daughter, her job, whatever. And then her mom brings up how like, oh, it's so nice that like Dennis was there, blah blah blah. And then Portia's like, oh yeah, and then basically goes into detail of how like with this pandemic, like the relationship's been kind of rocky. Basically Dennis is getting on her damn nerves, pretty much is what she said. Like she basically was like, something that was small before the pandemic now is something like, okay, like it turns into being toxic. And I can only imagine, like, I'm sure there's a lot of marriages, if they were on the rocks with this pandemic, that are probably like calling it quits, or like, you know, when you spend a lot of time around somebody or around like people in general, like, you know, you get to learn about them more when you literally are with them 24/7. So, and we already know from the blogs that obviously they don't work out, but yeah, so they're just talking about Dennis, and basically their relationship is just in. So then we get the scene with Cynthia at her house. She is going to have Drusadora, Kenya and Latoya over. The first people to arrive are Kenya and Latoya. They rode together because they're best friends or whatever now. Very weird. Oh yeah, and Marlo too. So they ride together. And when they get in the house or whatever, they're automatically just throwing like, it's obviously fun shade, but it's like, bitch, like, mind you, Cynthia set up this whole layout, food, like, you know, like she really has all her shit like together. Like it's pretty, it's fancy. And they're over there just complaining, like, what did Kenya say? Kenya was just like, are these fake grapes? Why don't you have real grapes? Blah, blah, blah. And then here goes Latoya adding in her shade, like, oh yeah, you know, I love cold meatballs. And Cynthia in the confessionals basically like, hold up, bitch. Like, you know, like on some, don't, like, before you joke around with me, ask yourself if I even play with you like that. That's pretty much what all that was. Cause like I said, I do like Latoya individually, but like I said, her being with Kenya is gonna get annoying. She's gonna start being in that mean girl role. And I feel like she's low-key trying to hop in too fast. Like, it's like, okay, like you're a newbie, you're a beginner. Like, just cause you're on the show doesn't mean you know these girls. You could joke and play around with them, throw shade, whatever. Like, we don't know you. Chill. Don't let Kenya get you fucked up. So then Marlo shows up and she is hugging the girls. Kenya in the confessional throws shade about her look and how she has fallen off, and I really don't think Kenya should be talking, but typical Kenya. So then it flips back to Candy. They're at their house now. Riley has just walked in. Candy's over there being emotional and crying because she sees like the diploma. Riley was, Candy had gave her like flowers, and Riley was like, oh, I wish I would have gotten money. Like, and then Todd does give her money. He gave her like a whole stack. Like, he gave her, that was definitely had to be like maybe a few racks in there. Just like, just a brick. Like, here you go. I'm like, damn, it must be nice to be rich. Like, imagine like telling your friends, oh, what'd you get for your graduation gift? Oh, I got a nose job. Candy basically starts talking about how, like, you know, Riley's going to college and that's something that like she never experienced, and just her being proud of her, like going off, trying to pursue her dreams and getting her degree. So then it flips back to the girls at Cynthia's house. And they were talking about Riley, like the first car she got was some super expensive ass car. Like I said, Candy be cashing her out. That's why, throwback to the first episode when she was like, oh, you're in college now, it's gonna be a lot of money. Like, girl, But anyway, so then they start talking about sugar daddies. Latoya talks about how she has a sugar daddy, and then Marlo wants to play dumb. They're like, what's a sugar daddy? And it's like, Marlo, like, you're literally known on this show for having sugar daddies. And they throw a flashback of her saying how her mom's house is paid, her house is paid, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, you really trying to play like you don't know. Like, you literally, she learned everything from you. So they talk about how Latoya's sugar daddy, she talks about how she used to be like a stripper back in the day. That's where she met him. And the girls just start getting, you know, having fun, playing or whatever. And Latoya starts, there's a scene where Latoya gets in like Kenya's face, and it's just like, and then Kenya's over like, oh, you like that, bitch? You like that? Like on some kiki shit. And honestly, I can't remember his name right now, but Cynthia's husband, his face had me crying. Cause that was my exact face too. Cause it was like Marlo said in her confessional, who is this girl? Like, Kenya, where, like, blink twice for help. But she was really like on some other shit to the point where it's like, girl, this is not you. That's why I'm like, that's how you know she going through it. Like, Mark is literally having her just. So yeah, flip back to Cynthia's house with all the girls. Drew finally shows up with her husband, Ralph, and Cynthia's husband, like I said, I can't remember his name. I think it's Mark, I don't know. They go off or whatever, and basically they're asking Drew about her foot. I think she has like a boot on her foot. She like ruptured her Achilles or whatever. And basically the girls are getting situated in, and she starts talking about her foot, and then Latoya cuts her off and it's like, oh, I don't care about that, I just want to drink. Like, honestly, like, I know she was playing, but in that moment it's still like, you're doing too much. Like, I feel like she's just too excited to be like, oh, I feel like in her head she's like, oh my gosh, like, I'm with the Housewives, like, I'm really on this show. Like, she's just doing too much. Latoya stands up with producer Dora, and it's like, I don't like you. And at first I was like, damn, like, they cut into this shit fast, no build up, nothing. Like, hey, I just want you to know I don't like you. But turns out it was a joke. She was talking about the game, because we all know with her role, she ruined Melanie and Derwin. So like, that was a little fun shade or whatever. I think kind of to like bring down like maybe the tension in the room, because it's very apparent that like Kenya does not like Drew. In her confessionals, she was saying how she was very underwhelmed. I won't lie, that was low-key kind of funny because Drew is very chill and reserved, but it's still like you don't really have a reason to not like her like at all. And then Marlo's throwing shade at Kenya, basically saying like, oh, like Latoya's good for you, it'll like ease you up, blah 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 blah. Which is true because Kenya is over there acting like she's 25 or something. Like she's just very loosey-goosey with it. And then Marlo pulls over Latoya to the side. Latoya gets up and Marlo walks over to her, and basically she starts whispering in her ear how like Kenya can't be like, basically saying how Kenya ain't shit and she can't get a man or whatever. Typical Marlo like bullshit. And it is gonna be interesting how the season's gonna be without, not say without Nene, but without Nene for Marlo, because that is like her main go-to girl. And when you think about the overall cast, like she now at this point doesn't have just one person individually that's like her like butt buddy, you know? So she's gonna have to scheme in other ways. Personally, I think Bravo should bring her on as a Housewives. I would like to know more of Marlo's story, especially with the sugar daddies, because whole family taken care of, got all the designer stuff she wants, cars, like let me know the tea. So then we have a scene with Cynthia's husband and Ralph, and they're just chatting up, having some guy talk, and basically Ralph starts telling him how like with Drew's mom living there, how it's caused some issues, and it'd be making him just want to get up on the go and like run away and be like needing a break. So they throw it back to the girls, and Cynthia's basically having the girls try different wines, and these are from Black-owned businesses. Obviously with all the Black Lives Matters and protests going around, Cynthia's trying to put her foot back into like, you know, her specialty, because we all know she has like her own wine business. And the wines, like the ones that they tried, like I'm gonna have to try out, because it seemed like they was getting like lit. Like I could tell definitely with Kenya, like she was, that shit was hidden. I think she said like Aisha Curry, she has some wines or something that they were trying. So then Latoya talks about how she wants to hook Kenya up with somebody, and Kenya's just like, I'm not trying to get hooked up, blah, blah, blah. And once again, they talk about Latoya's separation, and basically she's saying because she's separated, that means you can do whatever the fuck you want. And the girls are kind of like, what? Like, you're not like divorced, you're just separated. I don't mean that you get to like have your fun and then like come back, resolve or whatever. And then Drew opens up a gateway for Drew, starts talking about her relationship with Ralph, and how, mind you, remember how Ralph was talking to Cynthia's husband saying that, oh, like he wanted to take a break and he went for 3 days. Drew's over here saying that he went for 3 days but didn't tell her nothing, no contact, nothing. Like he pretty much just ghosted her and left, which is kind of like, how you just not gonna tell your wife where you're going for 3 days? Just get up and leave. Like, okay. So then Cynthia and Kenya, they go back down to the kitchen, and Kenya starts telling Cynthia how Latoya had made a comment about Drew's hair, saying that she had a cat on her head. I really feel like Latoya was just being a hater and just trying to talk shit for no reason, because Drew's hair was actually like really, really cute, and I feel like it was honestly laid. So I don't know what the fuck she was talking about. So I'm saying she's gonna try to go into that little mean girl shit with Kenya. And then this is when Kenya starts talking about how she's gonna get the custody action for her daughter, and how she wants to eventually move into getting divorced. And basically she's just like, you know, pretty much at her wit's end, and like this is what she needs to do. She feels like obviously Mark, is his name Mark? Yeah. That her husband is an asshole, which he is, and he's gonna try to fight her tooth and nail. I'm pretty sure. I think I heard in the blogs he was trying to get alimony or something. So I'm not even surprised, honestly. So then the last scene was a good, this is where I was like, okay, this season's gonna be good. This is something new and fresh that we need. So it's Drew and her husband Ralph. Ralph has this cook that he hired for them to cook for the anniversary. He got the rose petals, all the little good shit, whatever. They're sitting at the table. At first, the conversation's sweet. They're just talking about, like, you know, how they've been together for 6 years, and like going on their 7th year, like they're having their wedding, just like, you know, like it's a sweet conversation. And then Drew makes a comment basically saying like, how there's up and downs in relationships, and there's things that they need to work on. And Ralph is like, well, what do we need to, do you feel like we still need to work on? And she says transparency, and obviously brings up the example of how he left for 3 days, wasn't gonna tell nobody. And they get into this argument, and she's basically telling him, like, I'm your wife, like, I need to know where you're going, you know, like, makes sense. And he's over there just being so defensive and not trying to tell her at all. She keeps asking him, where'd you go, and he's like, oh, it's none of your business, blah blah blah. I really feel like just from this quick scene, I could tell that Ralph is someone who would like gaslight her and just gonna turn the tables wherever she says, oh, well, you blah blah blah, and just turn the tables and just flip it and try to get the attention off of him. And that kind of gives me like cheater vibes, because for one, once he eventually did tell her where she went to, he was in Florida. I don't remember the exact part of Florida, but he went to Florida because he said he went to the beach. And like she said, there's a bunch of beaches out here. You pass the 3 beaches to go all the way out to Florida. And in my head, just from the shit I've seen from Florida, anybody's nigga going to Florida for 3 days and not telling you shit is cheating. I'm pretty sure, because they be getting active in Florida. Because you had all these other places you could have go to, and you was on the defense hella hard, not trying to tell her. Like, no, the nigga honestly is just weird. Like, he's just weird. Because she also brought up how, like, oh, like, I know you have a secret camera watching us. I found a picture of your phone of me, the kids, and my mom in the living room, and I found the camera. And her husband does work in tech, but I'm like, I'm sorry, like, that's weird. Like, you know, she was like, oh, like, that's disrespectful and my privacy. I'm like, bitch, that shit is just weird. Like, it's one thing if you know there's cameras in the house and then, like, I guess that picture came up, but the fact that you didn't even know there was a camera there, like, he's secretly watching you, like, to me, personally, it just gives me, like, serial killer vibes. Like, it just, it's very odd. Like, why are you secretly watching them, especially when you be the one getting up to leave and goes? Like, there needs to be cameras on you, since you don't be telling where you're going to. I don't know. The argument just turned way left. She ended up getting up, going to, assuming her mom's bedroom, because I heard her mom's voice in there, which is basically crying and saying how she feels like she can't get through to them. So from this segment alone, we know, like, this is gonna be clearly her storyline. I am interested to see more, because at first I thought Ralph was cool, but then after that, I'm like, oh no, like, he weird, he possibly a cheater, like, he just, And yep, that was the end of the episode. I'll be back next week for episode number 3. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my socials, and I will see you guys next time.